So what I'm doing is, what we need to do now so we can see the image is put the drapery on this side. What I've done now is I've created an analog of the western sky and the eastern sky. And I've placed the lights very, very close to the polyboard. And I'm basically taking advantage of that square of the distance rule. Remember, you learned in film school that you want to try to put the light as far away from your set as possible, so as the actor walks around in the room, they don't get brighter and dimmer. You know, because the sun is so far away, you walk a block, it doesn't get any brighter, right? Well, you try to do that too, but I'm actually doing the opposite of that. I place the lights really close so that they're bright at the bottom and darker up at the top. And that's intentional because it emulates that gradated light that occurs naturally at sunset of the western sky and the eastern sky. Then the other thing I've done is I've got the camera set about 4,300 Kelvin right in the middle, and I've got that side running warmer and this side running cooler, right? And also that side's a lot brighter because this is the sun side. All right, so if you guys can take the overheads down entirely, and we're blacking out so no light is leaking through. Yeah, okay, that's looking a lot better. All right, now the thing that we need to add is basically the low row of hills. And what I do is I carefully lift this up. We've got it in place here. Can you lift this up carefully? Don't hit the car. It's the only Ferrari I own. Okay, so then I'll let you do this, and then somebody go help him with that stand. What I do, let him get by. Okay, what I do is, you come up, both of you. Don't put it in the stands yet. Okay, come up with both sides. Careful, don't hit the car. See what's happening? The low row, come a little higher. A little bit more. Stop. Yeah, maybe a tiny bit higher in the back. Whoa, maybe a tiny bit higher in the front. Whoop. Go ahead, Wick. A little bit higher in the front, if you can. Yeah, something like that. Again, it's done to taste. Whatever looks good. Yeah. Yeah, as soon as you land that in a stand. Whoa, that's good, Wick. Now, where did all that light come from? Did the skirt fall down? Okay. You guys see what I'm doing? I'm basically making a fake emulation of how the environment was that lit that car at the end of the runway. I'm looking into black, but I want it to be a dark background. And over to the right, I've got a sunset that I've emulated with gradated light. And now I've created a low row of hills over here to the right that puts that line down the side of the car, right? And, do we need a sandbag or? Okay. All right. Then he's going to fix the skirt. Our lights are, normally we don't have a projector on stage. Yeah, that did it. All right. So now we need to gently get this one on this side set, the ground row or low row of hills. So right now I'm looking directly at that stand, the one in the back. So we might want to re-engineer that. But let's hand hold the ground row in place. Don't hit the car. Okay, hold it. Yeah, whoa, that's good. Come down with it a little bit and come down lower in the front, Wick, if you can. You gonna get in the stand? Somebody want to give him a hand in the back?
The skirts on location?
Yeah, sometimes. If there's something really ugly that I want to take out of the reflection, but they're big. Sometimes they'll be like 3 meters tall by 30 meters long, and pray there's no wind, because that'll eat you alive. All right, so can you raise that side up now, Wick, your end? Yeah, good. All right, now the only thing that remains, two things. I've violated the rule, and they'd be very unhappy that the logo of the car is not too visible, right? So we're going to solve that by bouncing a little bit of light into it as soon as Wick is done doing what he's doing. Can you bring that card over, Wick? Yeah. So I'm so sorry, I'm standing on a chair. Wick is going to slide this in until it bounces light into the logo. Keep going, Wick. Boom, that's it. So do you need tape or something to keep it there? There's a roll of black tape over here. Do you have black? I think he has a roll of heavy-duty black. You got enough? Let me see. Yeah, okay, so now we've kicked a little bit of light into the grill. And then we could do it in post-production, but to keep the agency happy, I try to make the shot we're creating on set look as real. So we're going to clean up the extra light that's kicking us over there. Okay, let me see, that's good. And then bring one more small flag, because I've got these tubes over here are slamming light into the lens and reducing the contrast. So we're going to do something right there. No, go right here on the other side. It's those tubes screaming into the lens. Yeah, crossover. Yeah, it's this stuff screaming into the lens. Yeah, there you go. You can come on board a little bit more. It's got to be there and lower. Yeah, can you bring a stand for him? Something like that. Oh, good. Yeah, all we need is a piece of tape. Can you hand me the tape roll again? Thanks. All right, so the challenge, we're essentially lit to where I want to be, but what's going on now is I don't have enough depth of field to keep the whole car in focus. So let me see where we are in the dimmer over there, right side. All right, so they're running at 100%. So what I need to do is get more depth of field, and so I need more exposure. I don't want to turn up the ISO, because it just makes it noisier. So what I'm going to do is actually start to undercrank the camera. If you remember, whenever I do these sort of things, I've got a motion control rig. In the motion control rig, you can rehearse the shot as it's going to appear later when you play it back, and then you can start to scale its speed. So if I shoot at 12 frames, I can run half the speed. I shoot at 6 frames, I run at 1/4 the speed. And if I shoot at 3 frames, I'm going to run at 1/8 the speed. So I'm going to slow this. I'm going to slow the frame rate down. Let me push the right button here. I'm going to go down to 6 frames. It's warning me about exposure issues. But now that allows me to stop down more. Now, you could never do this if you had people in the shot, because they would look like, but it allows me to undercrank, and now I gained 3 stops of light. I'm essentially at 22, and I can keep the whole car in focus. Yeah, I'm real happy with how it looks. I mean, this model car, its surface on the right side is not super smooth. You can see it's a little ragged, but that's the paint job. That's the surface of the car. But the things I've learned is the low row of hills, particularly on the right side, needs to be very smooth. Now, sometimes, to scale, that can be 15, 20 meters long on the right side. But I've learned that it has to be smooth, and sometimes we use lightweight aluminum pipe so we can actually curve it. to help change the shape. It depends on the shape of the car, and you can't predict what's going to happen. You just have to be prepared to adjust that as you're doing it. And I've made this side cooler. Let me just see what my app says here. This side is running at, the right side is running at 4,600. I'm going to make it a little bit warmer. I'm going to turn it down to like 37. And then let me see what the other side is. The other side is 7,000 Kelvin. I'm going to bump it. I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit more, just so you can see the point. It's probably a little overdone right now, but anyway. One thing I've learned is the clients can be psychotic about the accuracy of the color of the paint in the car. They'll show up with paint chips, and in the color correction session, the thing you got to know is the lighting in the color correction room needs to be 5,000 Kelvin, because the projector is 5,000, or any monitors you're using are 5,000 Kelvin too. So if you look at the paint chip and their tungsten light or warm light, it'll skew your eyeball. So you got a lot of color correction rooms, what I've worked in, where they do a lot of car commercials, they actually have a little light box with a 5,500 Kelvin soft light in there. You can stick the paint chip in and look at it and look at the screen and literally match the color by eye. Is everybody understanding what we're doing here? We're basically emulating how this car would appear at sunset in what we call magic hour, but now we're doing it on stage. And my philosophy behind the reason for doing that is, to your viewer, it's very comfortable. They don't know why they've seen this before. There's many ways to light a car. I've seen people reflect Kinoflow tubes into the car, and it's really ugly, right? This looks all very, very beautiful because we've seen it before, right? You don't know you've seen it before, but if you've seen a car driving around at sunset or parked at sunset, your eye has seen this. So it's always my philosophy to do something that feels comfortable to the eye, yet beautiful. So if you guys want to come up and look, I know you've been sitting back there, but come on up and look around the camera. Yes, gentleman has a question.
To ask, you were saying about cranking down, were you talking about the shutter speed or something?
No,
like
I was doing frame rate.
Frame rate, okay. What frame rate? So
I'm now at 6.
6 frames per second?
Yeah.
And how do you plan to implement later on, because you're going to use this motion?
I'm assuming I have a motion control rig here.
Okay.
That I can scale the move. Mm-hmm. So I would be running at 1/4 the speed when I'm shooting.
Okay.
And then when it's played back at 24 or 25 frames per second, it looks normal.
All right.
But
perfect.
For the client's purposes, the motion control rig can move fast. And so we would first move at the speed it'll play back later. And then I'll tell the motion control operator, hey, I'm running at 6 frames. And the system just does the math for them, and it runs at 1/4 speed.
All right, thank you.
Now, granted, you can't have any people in the shot, because they would all look really weird. If they insisted on having people, I would do another pass, where I could light the people and shoot them at 24 or 25, and then do a pass for the car. And many times when we're lighting the car, I'll do multiple passes for that. Like the one thing we're missing here, I don't have a pointer, but you can see the fronts of the tires are just black, because they're reflecting the black ground surface, and quite often they want to have a suggestion of the tire tread. So we'll take some Leco lights, projected lights, and send light into the tires. Of course, it looks like crap because it's reflecting in the body of the car, but we'll do a pass. We turn off all the lights and just light the tires and do a pass for that, and then we'll turn turn those off and turn the car light on, the car body light on, and they'll in post use just the tires and then just the car body. And then sometimes we'll do the lights on the left and the lights on the right as a separate pass too, to allow them to assemble. Another time, see, this car does not have any outside rearview mirrors, that are on the outside of the car, but they make a really ugly reflection in the side of the car. So many times we'll take them off, do one pass, then put them back on and do another pass, so that they appear there but they don't have any reflection, because they make a really ugly reflection in the car. This car doesn't have any. I guess it's a Ferrari, always in front. You don't care who's behind you, right? It's the only Ferrari I own, by the way, this one. Anybody have any other questions about
Yes, I
how
do.
we got here? Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Gotcha.
When you're doing stuff in studio, would you ever want the headlights on?
Oh, sometimes we do that.
Okay.
And outside, when we're driving, it's now a requirement. I mean, I don't know what the rules are in Europe, but in the United States, any vehicle sold has to have, at least they call it daytime running lights in English. Is that the same here, where the lights are always on? It's a different set of lights. You know, they aren't as bright. At night, they're headlights, high and low beam. During the daytime, it's a different set of lights. But yeah, we'll sometimes do that. And again, it's the choice of the agency. And we're chicken shit, so we actually shoot it both ways as a separate pass, so they can shoot. It gives you the ability to adjust the brightness of that, because what we'll do is we'll just turn off all the lights and do a pass with just those lights on as a separate element, so they can lay them in at whatever brightness they need. Yeah, the beauty of doing the motion control thing is you can do all these things at different layers and then adjust them infinitely in post, or not use them. Right, yes sir.
Yes, I have a question. What kind of lights would you use if it was a real scale car? Like,
You mean full-size car?
Full-size car,
Yeah,
obviously
well,
not pipes, right?
it's evolved over time, because I've been doing this about 30 years. It started out with the lights over here were cyc lights, which stands for cyclorama. And they were designed to light like a blue screen or a green screen wall. They lay them on the floor and they light the whole wall. But they were designed to evenly light the whole wall from bottom to top. We would turn them over because we don't want it evenly lit. So we'd turn them over so they would fail and make the bottom really bright and the top really dim. Then we started moving into kinoflows, and now we're into LED tubes. And you know, end to end, and then we overlap them a little bit so there's no dark sections. That makes sense?
Yeah. So there are a lot of LED pipes, right? Or
Yeah, a lot of LED tubes. I mean, I was really lucky that Lenlight loaned me these tubes, and they're 8 feet long, so they're perfect for this. But if we're doing a real car, we'd probably have 4 or 5 sets of them, 4 wide or maybe even 8 wide to get the amount of power we needed, and then running all the way along. And then because if we're shooting a real car, you're moving this, what we call a bounce flat, around to get the reflection right. We actually attach the lights to the bottom of the wall, the bounce flat, so they all move together. So the lights are attached, and also the low row of hills is attached as well. So as you move the wall, everything goes together. Otherwise, it just takes too long. Does that make any sense? Yeah, it just speeds things up. And it used to be, you know, back in the days with tungsten, we were doing these colors with gel, but now with LEDs, you just dial the color you want. It's amazing. Yes, sir.
Yes, I think you talked about it already, but I missed it. What kind of focal length do you typically use for that kind of shot?
It's a good question. Yeah, we did talk about it. It depends on the car, and the agency will quite often give you some sample images of whether they like wide-angle-y sort of look at the car or longer lens. But I'm typically doing this kind of thing about 85 millimeters on a Super 35 camera. Mm-hmm. In this case, I asked for like 100 mil because I wanted to be a little bit farther away. Otherwise, I'm right inside the set, and I'm having trouble setting flags to get the car the proper size and frame. But it's about 85 millimeters, maybe 100 is what I prefer personally. But sometimes the agency will say, no, we want more wide angle. I'll be at 50. Rarely have I been wider than 35 because it really starts to distort the shape of the car.
Yeah.
You know, it looks too bulbous. Doesn't look like it really looks to your eye. Mm-hmm. It's a good question, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody that hasn't had an opportunity to come over here and look, please get up and feel free to come look. You don't have to stay back here. You don't have to sit in the chairs. Come look at what you're looking at. And take as many pictures as you want. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you ever use anything like sky panels as well? Or
yes, I've done that too.
Okay,
yes.
just as an overhead frame, like a big frame overhead kind of thing? Or?
It used to be we started that way, but that just puts this soft light over the whole thing. And I like to do this graduated thing, but I have used sky panels along the bottom edge, you know, right one against the next one.
So you use sky panels and then you have the bouncing.
No, I do this exact structure.
Okay,
just
cool.
like this, with sky panels at the
sky
bottom.
Panel underneath it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And notice that I've used the low row of hills, for lack of a better term, to keep the lights from shining directly on the car. Mm-hmm. The only thing the car is reflecting is the white polyboard.
Right. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Which in a full-size car, that's bleach muslin, seamless bleach muslin. I've heard that somewhere in Belgium is a loom that's 10 meters wide, which is 33 feet. And so we make our thing a little bit less than 10 meters, and it wraps around the edge, and it's one piece with no seams or whatever in it. And it has to be very, very clean, because one of the things we asked for polyboard, and I didn't know this, but the polyboard has black specks in it, which would be disastrous because you would see it reflected in the car. So of the 4 pieces I asked for, 2 of them didn't have black specks in the side. I don't know why they do that, but maybe it's, I guess in real life it's building insulation. Is that what it's really used for? So people don't care, right? Yeah, okay. Well, like many things in our business, the stuff that's used in construction is cheap, and the stuff that's specific to our business is really expensive. Yeah. Yes, sir, go ahead.
In terms of f-stop, of course, we are talking about sometimes not so much prep, maybe. Well, with cars, maybe a bit more. But do you risk creative things like play more with more controlled environments, or f-stop like shallow depth of field or something like that?
Well, because this is a model and we're actually doing like a macro shot, I'm stopped down way more than I would be if we're shooting a real car. But on a real car, I'd be somewhere around 5'6" or so on an 85 millimeter to carry the entire length front to back. So usually the backgrounds for this kind of thing are pretty vague, and I have no desire to see it sharp, you know. And particularly outside, when you remember the car we shot outside, I let the hills back there go a little soft intentionally. I didn't want that to be sharp back there. And that's all, I have to have enough depth of field to carry the focus on the car front to back, but not so much that I keep the background sharp.
And maybe any other tips with the shape of the car, because I notice now that look deep into it, that is very tricky. You already mentioned a few things, but we're keeping the shape of the car right with the zoom and everything. But
yeah.
Is there other things, any tips?
Well, the angle you look at it's important, but again, they're going to define that for you, right? But quite often this, what we call a 3/4, is very commonly done. You know, so they either do that front or back or a profile. And then sometimes they don't want to see the back if they think it's particularly ugly, or don't want to see the front, you know, one way or another. But this is real common. And interestingly enough, we typically always do the driver's side. So if we're in England, we'd be doing the other side of the car. And then the other thing is, one thing that they don't like to see is the gas filler door. So they'll either hide that and, you know, obscure it in post, or shoot the other side of the car, depending. Because it's just, again, visual noise. They just, you know, want it to look as clean as possible. Yeah. So you guys who just came in late, feel free to walk down here and look at what we've done. We've lit a model car as beautifully as we can to emulate how a car looks like outside at magic hour. Let me grab my water bottle.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
What are you doing different when you're shooting details of the car? So are you moving the lights? Or?
No, you remember I showed you briefly in the PowerPoint how I had that car, I believe it was a black car, in the lobby of our convention center in Los Angeles, and then I moved in for a close-up. If you've lit it properly, the close-ups look beautiful. Yeah, now if you change angles, you got to change the lighting, you know, so it'll work, so it'll fit.
So it's just moving the lights with the camera.
Yes, and the reality of it is the tint or the structure and the car kind of get locked together. So if you move to a profile, this whole, you know, the car will move that way and the whole thing will move that way too.
Okay, thank you.
On stage, we're hanging them from chain motors, and there'll be a bridle on the frame. That's a antenna truss frame, you know, kind of this stuff, but lighter weight. And they put a bridle, it all comes to one point, and then they'll connect that with 4 chain motors so they can lengthen one and make one shorter and literally move it around. And then they hang on to it from the bottom and kind of steer it around to get to the angle they want. Making sense? This is the grips doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that grips work is kind of different here. This would probably be the electricians doing it here. But in the United States, the grips do all the heavy work like that. I can let him have the...
Yeah, basically over here...
I don't think it's working.
Yeah,
there you go, now it's working.
We're using the U.S. system is grips and gaffers are grips and electricians are built off in parallel teams. We always say electricians make light, grips make shadows, carpenters make overtime.
Yeah.
But here, generally, it's very much the UK system, across Europe as well, which is there is a dolly grip. And everything else about moving lighting equipment is being done by electricians and sparks.
But even moving something that doesn't have any power.
Right. Yeah, gripping is strictly camera movement.
Okay, because
Yeah,
in the
that's
U.S.,
UK system.
if it's powered, the electricians are taking care of it, like lights. But then if it's not powered, if it's big, just structural stuff that's cutting light or blocking light, it's all grips, including the dolly system. And then the camera department's only responsible for the camera. Everything below the pan head belongs to the grips. Okay, yes, you have another question.
I have a question. So if it was a real size car, do you also use a foam, or you can use white fabrics?
No, it's fabric. It's bleached muslin. Somewhere in Belgium's a loom that's 10 meters wide. So we buy that, and it cannot have any seams, can't be joined. It has to be continuous. So it's 10 meters wide by however long we need. We do 10 by 20 meters typically. It's one piece of cloth, white.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can't get poly this big without seams, that big without seams. Yeah, here's a question.
Coming back to your presentation earlier, your filming of the space shuttle launching.
Launch, yes.
How do you expose for that?
Very interesting question, because they had us show up 11 days early, 11, because once the fuel tank is filled with rocket fuel and liquid oxygen, it's a bomb. They fill that tank 3 days before, right? So they want you to get there 11 days before to start planning where your camera's going to be, focal length, how you're going to protect it, all that kind of stuff, how you're going to trigger it, because you can't be there. They have multiple layers of security, but at 2,000 feet away from the launch vehicle, they've got a perimeter fence. And there cannot be any people inside that fence when the rocket launch occurs. And it's even still very dangerous. Just off to the right of where our camera position was, there was a bunch of tanks, and it was several windsocks. And I never went anywhere without an escort from NASA with us inside there. And I asked my escort, why do you have a windsock? Do helicopters land here? And he says, no. If you hear an ooga horn, like a U-boat dive signal, that ooh-ah, ooh-ah, you look at the windsock and run upwind. And every 100 meters or so in this fence all the way around are gates, so you can get out. You can't get in, but you can get out. Those tanks are hydrazine, and one breath of hydrazine will kill you. And it's just this fog. And so there's detectors that detect a leak, and if there's a leak, then you run upwind away from it. You look at the windsock and run upwind away from it. But then there's two massive tanks that look like water towers. There's actually three. At one end, there's a massive water tower. And then on either two sides, there's one that has the rocket fuel, basically kerosene in it, and liquid oxygen. And they put them as far apart as they can, because once they come together, they're very volatile. And on 3 days before, they start to fuel the liquid, the fuel tank that's brown. The solid rocket boosters on the side are solid propellant. And we're not allowed to be in there once that happens. So about 4 days before the launch was the last time I saw the camera, and I basically looked at the weather. And in reality, I overexposed a little bit because the rocket plume is clipped out. So I chickened out and overexposed a little bit. I thought it was going to be more overcast than it was, but you're guessing on the weather. If it had been full sun, I would have been in deep trouble because I kind of guessed it was going to be overcast. But it's a really good question. They asked us what the trigger protocol for the camera was. In an Alexa, in the RS connector, there's a pin that you pull to ground for 200 milliseconds and then release it. And when the camera sees that happen, it starts to roll. And then to cut the camera, you do that again. Like the push button on the side of the camera or remote switch is literally, it's just shorting out that pin to ground. It's a really robust trigger signal because when that rocket motor's running, there's all kinds of lightning bolts and shit happening that would affect the camera's starting and stopping. So luckily, that pulling a pin to ground and then releasing it is a really robust sort of signal to the camera. And then all the noise that occurred didn't affect the camera. They kept rolling the entire time. We had triple redundant power supplies. We had batteries and then 2 AC power supplies. The trigger signal was actually tied to their sequencing computer back in the bunkhouse, the blockhouse, which was 4 or 5 kilometers away. And it's the same sequencing computer that was used for the Apollo launch missions. I asked them, which was 35 years earlier, I said, how come you haven't changed it? And they said, it works, and we don't want to change it. The sequence of, first they light, when they get to 0 in the countdown, they light the liquid-fueled engines that are on the bottom of the shuttle, and they make sure that all 3 of them are burning properly by looking at them, and they can look at the fuel flow, and then they steer them all, and while all this is happening, the whole shuttle system is held down with explosive bolts, right? And then they simultaneously light the solid rocket motors and fire the explosive bolts, and it starts to move. They say if the explosive bolts, if one or both of them didn't blow, it would take the entire crawler platform with it for about 200-300 feet and then crash back in a huge fireball if they didn't blow. And they said that's why they don't want to change the sequencing computer, because they know it works. But my camera was triggered by that same sequencing computer. So they asked us, how far in advance do you want to roll? We were shooting high speed, so we knew the capacity of our magazine. We were doing 120 frames per second. So we said, well, we want to roll 10 seconds before, because it's really interesting. An abort at T-minus 10 or later is rare. An abort at T-minus or sooner is fairly common. And lo and behold, they aborted at T-minus 14 seconds. The thing that sits on top of the fuel tank that pulls away the vapors that are boiling off moves off to the side, and it hits a micro switch. And there was something wrong with the micro switch, and they moved it off to the side, and it didn't hit the micro switch, and they held, that happens at like T-minus 30. And they said, okay, we've got an anomaly, and they held the count. If we had said roll at 15 seconds, all our film would have been shot, all our magazine would have been consumed. So we picked T-minus 10, and then he says, okay, programs it in, asks for a test, talking on the walkie-talkie. I saw the camera rolled. He goes, okay, great, and he walks away. They said, no, you have to shut the camera off. They use nothing but film cameras. The reason for that is during the Challenger disaster, they had switched to digital cameras. The resolution was so low they could not see the seal in the rocket motors, solid rocket motors blowing out flames. Next door to Cape Kennedy is Cape Canaveral, which is an Air Force military launch facility. And they use giant 70 millimeter film cameras, not 65, 70, that take a square frame at 125 frames per second on these massive theodolites with 2,000 millimeter lenses. They shot the Challenger shuttle launch just for the hell of it. They were there, they had some film, and they shot, and it was that film that they could review, and as the rocket was going up, they could see the flames coming out. So at that point, NASA changed their mind and went back to shooting film. So there's lots of film cameras everywhere, and from film cameras, there's a buckle switch. So it would run out the film at whatever they're doing, 300 or 1,000 frames per second, and the buckle switch the film would pull through, trip the buckle switch, shut the camera off. They didn't realize the digital camera would just keep running. And it was very, very hot. I didn't want the camera to keep running and possibly overheat the magazine, the digital mag, and lose my shot. So I called him back and says, no, you got to trigger the camera to come off. And he says, well, how long? And I said, well, when does the shuttle leave the frame? And they had done it so many times. He says, how tall is the frame? And I looked in the viewfinder and said, well, it's about 4 shuttle systems tall. And he, in the back of his mind, knew how quickly it would accelerate, and he kind of doubled that, and that's what he programmed the thing to turn the thing off. The thing is astonishing. It's the only vehicle in the world that can go from 0 kilometers per hour to 100 kilometers per hour in its own length. Think about that. In its own length, and then 90 seconds, it breaks the speed of sound. 8.5 minutes, it's in orbit. I know a couple astronauts, it's one hell of a ride because it is not smooth at all. It's got to be scary and shit. You know, it's really shaking the shit out of them. But yeah, an amazing thing. It's the most amazing thing I've ever done. And I shot it myself from 3.5, 4 kilometers away with a 1200 millimeter lens that I tracked it up manually. And I was standing there. I was in the vehicle assembly building parking lot. We were working for NASA. So I wasn't over where the press was, which is another place quarter mile away, looking from a different angle. I'm looking down the crawler road. So sitting on the pad, I can see the shuttle. It's actually a better place to be. The press people, unless they have a big tall tower, can't see the shuttle sitting on the ground. It's hidden behind trees. So I was looking down the road, and the count is running, and all around me were hundreds of NASA employees who had traveled there to watch the last launch. You know how you go out to dinner with other people that work in the film business and you're talking about movies you've worked on, interesting shots you've done. These people had all worked sending men to the moon, and we're talking about that. Because they had come, there's NASA facilities all over the United States, because they had all come together, they were like meeting each other physically for the first time and realizing, oh my God, you worked on, the lunar rover. And they were talking about issues they had with that. And I'm hearing that go on all around me. And we knew how the count was running because one guy had his radio turned on, his car radio, sitting there. And when the count stopped, I'm all ready to shoot. It stopped at 14. We didn't know if it was going to start again or they'd delay days. Sometimes they delay days, weeks, right? And then all of a sudden I heard from behind me, okay, the count's restarted. I didn't know if it restarted at T-minus 30 or T-minus 14. I said, fuck it, I'm going to roll. And I did, and it was literally 14 seconds, and then off it went. So yeah, it was an amazing, amazing experience.
Did you see the stills photographs of a guy called Dan Winters? He did a book, Last Launch. Dan Winters. Was
he there? Yeah, they invited everybody. Yeah. I got to see that.
Amazing photographs.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you asked because it was an amazing experience for me. Anybody else? All right. I think we're going to... Do you have a question or comment?
Before we wrap it up, let's take a photograph of us just in front of you with everybody behind.
I think it's a great idea. Okay. So can you bring all the house lights, all these lights up? I want everybody to come up on stage, and we're going to take a group photo.